Hello, and thank you for joining us for our webinar. Today, we're talking about Microsoft M365 Copilot, Microsoft's fully integrated AI tool that's expected by the industry to revolutionize and transform how we all work. In today's discussion, we'll be learning what Microsoft 365 Copilot is and how to think about it relative to other AI tools. We'll see examples of how it will be embedded into the applications Microsoft users use every day. We'll share the latest updates on its release and talk about AI readiness in general. Joining us to guide us through these topics today is Alexandra Laflemme. Alex has 20 years of industry experience, the past 7 of which he's been focusing on Microsoft and most recently AI. He's a subject matter expert in Microsoft and, dare I say, a bit of an AI nerd. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I will make some nerd-like references throughout this presentation. So I will hopefully live up to that that nerd comment. So again, thanks everyone for joining us. Like Melanie just said, AI has come about very quickly onto the scene. Just a year ago, no one was really talking about it, but now even preteens know about Chat GPT. Which is the most well-known aspect of this. So we thought it'd be a good idea to kind of put ourselves in time to kind of see where we are and how it all started, right? So first, what is ChatGPT itself? A lot of people have heard the acronym but don't know what it stands for. So chat is obviously the same. It's the word to say that it's an option to be able to converse, to talk back and forth. And then the G is for generative, P is for pre-trained, and T is for transformer. So generative, it means that this tool is able to generate responses, so to create brand new responses. Pre-trained is to say that it is not a newborn baby. It has gone through phases of training to make sure that the responses that it gives are coherent. And then the transformer, that's the part that relates to the user. The prompts, the questions, the words that you're putting in is what is being transformed with this tool. So it first started late November of last year, and as this chart showed, it just kind of exploded onto the scene, broke all sorts of records as far as daily active usage. And then, as you can see from this chart, it kind of tapered off in May and in June because a lot of concerns were raised with the use of AI, least of which is the incoming apocalypse. But a lot of those concerns were on the privacy front, compliance and security, to see who can see what the data you're putting in, the responses that you're getting, if there's any type of trail, if it's being used to train. And because of some high profile cases that have been in the news, the temperature for the use of ChatGPT has kind of dropped down a little bit. At the same time, Microsoft has announced that they're going to have their own AI tool, Microsoft Copilot, and this is what we're going to focus on today mainly. So on the next slide, yep. So what is Microsoft 365 Copilot is the focus of today. So for the first part of it, it really is very important to mention that it is not ChatGPT. It is based on the same GPT technology that was championed by OpenAI, but all of the GPT services from Microsoft 365 Copilot are hosted on the Azure stack. It is not on the OpenAI platform. It is not any data or anything like that is not linked to them. It does follow all the same protocols and process from all of the other Azure services anytime you deal with Microsoft. One of the advantages is that it's going to be fully integrated into the apps so that you're not going to have to switch from the browser where you're asking a certain question and to go back into whatever you're doing. It's going to have both a reactive and proactive mode. Reactive meaning that you get to put in prompts to or even if you have your mic enabled, you get to talk to your computer and ask it things. But at the same time, whenever you are doing anything, it will notice what you're doing and try to save you some time and give you some helpful information. A lot of that we can kind of see right now already with whenever you're sending a text to someone and there's some suggestions to autocomplete your sentences. So that would be the proactive type of a thing. And then the last thing is that instead of having a generalist type of AI like ChatGPT, you're going to have really like the specialist AI for what you want to do. And on the next slide, we're going to see a little bit more as to what we mean by that, because ChatGPT is one technology, one large language model, the GPT, whereas Microsoft 365 Copilot leverages multiple large language models, such as GPT, and it's GPT-4 that is being used in this case, as well as Da Vinci for anything like math. So if any of you have ever used ChatGPT for math questions, mixed results. Whereas with Copilot, it will have access to a, super smart mathematical genius. It will also have access to the DAL-E large language model, which you may or may not have heard terms like Stable Diffusion or Midjourney, which are programs that leverage this large language model to create amazing images out of just a few keywords. So anything that you want to do, it's going to have the right kind of tool set to help you with it. It's going to be integrated in your M365 applications, and the data that is going to be used is everything that's within what's called the Microsoft Graph. So pretty much anything that's within the Microsoft ecosystem. So anything that you have that has some sort of Microsoft component on the cloud, Copilot would be able to access. And one thing that, we really want to get into when we talk about the Microsoft Graph and your company data is that the Microsoft Copilot is really going to be customized and tailored to your company. So it is going to want to leverage your company's data, and there's likely going to be a ton of it that's available. It's going, again, to be integrated in all the apps, everything that you use. So you're not going to have to switch from one place to another. It's kind of surreal a little bit at first to be working in on a PowerPoint within Teams, but to have the same experience as if it was the desktop experience. But we get used to it. And then after the other thing that's going to be super important is that it's going to keep everything that it learns on you for you safe within that bubble, which is your tenant, which is your environment where all of your data, all of your emails, anything that you put on OneDrive, your SharePoint, all your Teams conversations, all of that is going to be protected, and unavailable for anyone else at the public at large. I hope I'm not talking too fast. Yeah. For the main things that Copilot is promised to be able to do, Microsoft has separated into three things: unleash your creativity, so that you never have to begin a project, from scratch. So from the beginning, trying to gather things, slides, images, things like that. It really is a huge shortcut for that. It's going to unleash your productivity so that you are going to be able to get from point A to point B a lot faster. For example, say right now, as a regular human person, I can walk from New York to Boston. It's going to take me many, many, many days, but it is something that's possible. Or I can drive with a car there, and it's going to take me 5 hours. So the car is not going to let me do something that I wouldn't be able to do myself, but it is going to be infinitely faster and easier on my feet to be able to use these types of tools. So think of that concept for the same thing for your productivity. So whenever you're working on a project and you have to analyze, say, like 10 different customer profiles to see, what the best course of action is, you could spend many, many hours doing this, creating Excel tables and things like that. But with these new tools, you'll be able to ask Copilot to do these things for you. So you will get these same results that you would be able to get on your own, but infinitely faster for the productivity score. And then, of course, on the third part, up-level your skills. This is something that's kind of been introduced a little bit with the auto-correcting that's available in Microsoft Word, or any type of like translations options or things like that. But with this, it's going to be even better in the sense that, and we're going to see some examples later, like say, for example, in a Word document, you don't really like your third paragraph. Well, you can ask Microsoft Copilot to make it more concise, or to make it more funny, or to change it to be bullet points that make sense. So it's going to give you better results, for what you're doing, and then you can learn from those to say, oh, okay, this is the better course of action, or this would be a better graph that would illustrate what I want to do. So it's going to be very interesting how people are going to use all of these things once it's live. So speaking of live, right? So we're going to see a little bit of actions. All of these videos are available. Like, I mean, if you go on YouTube and you type in Microsoft Copilot, you will see examples, demos of how Copilot can use. So we just want to have these images on there to kind of show you how it works, and you kind of talk on top of it as to what it actually brings. So I think first up is Outlook. So for Outlook, whenever you start your day, you open your Outlook. If you have Copilot, it's going to have the most important emails highlighted for you. It's going to know what you care about, what you have important action items to do. It's a little bit like the focused versus other that you have right now in your inbox, but again, with a lot of intelligence behind it. And whenever you start a response, a draft, a response to an email, it can actually start the draft for you. And it's not going to be like, dear valued customer, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be, hi, Steve, I noticed that you're asking about the TPS reports from yesterday. They're going to be ready, next Friday, as stated in the meeting last week. So all of these things that, again, you would be able to find on your own will be available for you right away. So it's going to cut down a lot on having to find that information, write the text, and you can always have it, with a very professional tone, so there's no accidents of, people misinterpreting things that you're saying on there. So it's a great little tool for that. Next up, we have Excel. This one is my second most favorite, because I use Excel, but not all that much. But whenever I do, I feel like I need, some sort of prescription for something, or I need to reevaluate my life choices, because it's very difficult for me to get Excel to do the things that I want it to do, because I never had advanced courses to learn those formulas, pivot tables, and all of that. Well, now I'm going to be rewarded for my lack of education on this, because Copilot in Excel means that you can ask it regular things using, natural language, like as if you were talking to an expert on Excel. And in this example, they just have a little prompt, oh, I want to know, some key trends in the business and all that. And these are the types of responses that you would get, concise bullet points, very impactful type of responses. You can even ask it to explain. And whenever you ask it to explain, it actually talks about the sources. It can show its work, so you can even get better at doing Excel. You can finally learn those formulas and those tables. But this is going to be, absolutely amazing. I'm just thinking of, my friends are in the marketing department. Usually a lot of people, they go into marketing because they don't like math and things like that. But in today's world, they use Excel more than anybody else. So it's going to be great for them. Next up in Word, for me on this one, it is the blank page syndrome that I have lived with all my life, where, you have it all open, it's a blank screen, and the middle, you know what you want to get across, but you just don't know where to start. Well, this is the cure for that. You can just have a couple of prompts, keywords, and it creates the draft for you. You don't like certain paragraphs, certain things, like I mentioned before, they can change the tone. It could be more casual, more professional. It could insert a joke. You can create an outline based on this. You can ask it for relevant info in prior documents that you had made on this. So it really is going to take, from, it used to take me 2 hours to write a brand new Word document. Now it's going to take me 15 minutes. So it's going to be great. I think the next one's yes, PowerPoint. This is the one that has made me use adult language the most in my life, because I have, I guess, maybe like some sort of issue trying to get PowerPoint to do what I want it to do. Whenever I'm adding pictures, trying to format, and then, everything's going great, and then I add another picture, and then the whole thing is messed up. I don't know if it sounds familiar to you, but at least for me, it's a daily struggle. So having access to just being able to tell PowerPoint what to do, it's going to, again, change completely how my decks are made and what kind of proposals, I'm going to be able to include into it without having to spend hours searching. Was it written this way? Is there that keyword in there? So it really is like adding that cognitive, that intelligence into any type of search or requests that you're doing to add on those things. And like I mentioned, because it's not just the GPT, since you want, whenever you want to ask it to create images and things like that, it's going to create brand new images for you based on what you're doing. So if you want, a dog with a red balloon at a park on a cloudy day, you don't no longer have to get, Getty Images or, Wonder with copyrights and things like that. It's going to create one for you. So this is the one that I really can't wait for. After that, I believe Teams. This is the one maybe that most of the other people on the call, that aren't PowerPoint challenge will get a lot of value out of, because ever since COVID, meetings have just exploded, and sometimes we go, back to back from meeting all day long. Sometimes you are late to a meeting, because the other one ran over, and now you come in here and you don't know, did I miss anything important and all that? Well, with Copilot in Teams, you're going to have access to that summary recap. You're going to have access to who said what at what time. You're going to have insights on, well, it seems that, Johnny on the call was a little bit upset about, the pricing, the tone that he was using and things like that. So it's all of that intelligence. And even from there, you can ask it, based on the conversation and on the needs of the customer, could you create a table, with 3 columns illustrating the pros and cons of, using our company. So it's going to be able to, again, like do a lot of that legwork for you on actionable items that you would have to do yourself from those Teams meetings. So it's going to be amazing. And for, translations, live transcripts, things like that, it's all going to be available right away. And then finally, Copilot in Business Chat. This is the one that looks the most like Jarvis from the Avengers, or from Iron Man. For those who haven't seen it or don't have kids, it is the AI assistant that keeps talking to the Iron Man person and tells them everything about what's going on, right? So you log into your office computer in the morning and you see your recent Teams conversations. One of these people is going to be Copilot. And that's going to be like your hub, if you will, of everything that you would want to do. So you can ask your Copilot friend, person, assistant, without even you opening Outlook, are there any emails in my Outlook, that are super important I haven't read? Or are there any recent conversations that I have that should bring up a new project, for what I want to do? Can you do like an example in here, an overview using sales data from the last quarter and get a summary of customer feedback? A lot of the things, again, that you could do on your own, but would take you a lot of time, this will help you. And sometimes you can just ask it, give me an idea for today, or things like that. So this one is going to be the most customizable. It's going to learn on what you like, the type of emails you want to do, the type of PowerPoint presentations you like to set up. So the more you're going to use this service, the Business Chat one, the more powerful it's going to get. And I think that's it for the main ones that are there. But as a lot of you probably have seen, like every other week, there's a new announcement from Microsoft that Copilot for this is coming out, Copilot for that is coming out. So there's definitely Copilot available in GitHub for anyone that does programming. And from the recent kind of feedback from developers, apparently over 80% of developers are using Copilot in GitHub now. So there's no pushback. There's no people that say, no, I'm going to go it alone. Like, it is a tool that is really helping out professionals in whatever they're doing. Copilot in OneNote is going to be available if you're a fan of OneNote and you like to have all of these documents and links available. Copilot in Loop is going to be available as well, but Loop itself is currently in preview, so you may have never heard of it. This is the one that kind of does the autocomplete, but for documents and files and things like that. So if you're in a Teams chat with someone and you're mentioning the last sales report, you would have a little pop-up that would say, hey, do you want to include the link for the latest sales report in the chat so that the other person doesn't have to look for it? So with Copilot put into there, instead of just keyword matching, if you will. It's going to be it's going to have some intelligence, so it's going to understand the context and be able to, kind of respond much more accurately and have impactful insights. So yeah. So what about the actual licensing, the dates, the pricing, and all of that, right? So all of the announcements from Microsoft were made in the spring. Then you had like the Microsoft Inspire in mid-July, and again, touting all of these features that apparently there's going to be no more drudgery in work. But for me, that reminds me of like the advertisements for the washing machines in the 1930s, that women were going to be liberated and never going to have to do anything as household chores again. But as we all know, life finds a way. So I don't think drudgery is going to be something of the past anytime soon. So here are the technical details, if you will. So right now, M365 Copilot is currently being piloted. So it's not something that's not yet created. There are some people trying it right now. It's an early access program. There's about 600 customers, and when we talk about customers, we're not talking about people, but actual like organizations. And those organizations have been invited by Microsoft. So it is not something that you can apply for unless you are a Microsoft managed customer in a Fortune 500-ish company. It is something that Microsoft will go to you to say, would you like to participate in this? Microsoft has been very, very tight-lipped on putting out any type of release date for the market, and we have to understand why. There are no historic precedents to provide guidance on this type of product, right? Like I don't know if you've heard like some of the sound bites from this, but they're talking about like the iPhone moment, or the new wheel or fire. That it would be the era before AI, era after AI, and all of that. So they want to make sure they get it right. There's only one chance to give a first impression. So they want to, and with all the implications at stake, I'm very happy that they're taking their time, and that taking this approach to make sure that it is going to be ready when they're releasing it. So as soon as we know, we will share. But if anyone tells you, oh, it's going to be that date or that date, that's a factually inaccurate statement. For the actual technical license requirements, right? So Microsoft 365 Copilot is going to be what's called an add-on. So this isn't something that you can just buy alone. It has to be added on to a base plan. A lot of you are probably already using Microsoft 365, so some of these license names might be familiar to you. So if you are on the business side, which would be kind of smaller tenants, 300 users or less, business standard and business premium will be compatible with Copilot. So you will be able to add this service to it. But from what we know, again, as far as the technical experience from this, you will only have a partial experience if you have Copilot on top of the business SKUs. Namely, it's going to be mostly the business chat, Teams, and the calendars that are going to work, and nothing about the apps. So for anything, Copilot for Word, Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint, you're going to need to have Microsoft E3 or above to make sure that you have everything available. And so far as we know, there will, other than the 2 levels of experience, it's still going to be the one same add-on. So what we can understand from this is that Microsoft is so confident that you will love Microsoft 365 Copilot that they don't want to create a partial license for it. They think that it's going to be worth the money that you put in, even if you get just a partial experience. So think of it like you're purchasing a car, but not doing too much driving, versus someone who purchases a car because they're driving, 200 miles a day. Well, the person that doesn't travel that much, the car is still very useful. So it's still a good idea to have one. And then for pricing, right? So this is something that is fairly new, that was announced at Microsoft Inspire. So it is $30 US per user per month for the add-on. So again, this would be on top of your base licensing. Very important, we're stressing this again, that depending on the underlying license, this is what's going to dictate your experience, if you will, for Copilot. And all of the previews that we've seen, there's some demos again available on YouTube from Microsoft and Microsoft Mechanics. They are showing the full license experience. Just a lot like when you see car commercials, there's a little asterisk at the bottom that says the model shown is the luxury super souped up one. So again, if you're looking for cost savings and things like that, it would be a partial experience. But if you want the full license experience, you're going to have to make sure you have the right licensing. So it's not out yet. We know what it's going to cost. We know a little bit what we're going to do. So what should we do? Just kind of wait until the next announcements? Well, the answer, luckily for us, is no. There are a lot of things that you can do right now. So we've made a list, I believe, of 5 tips of what customers can do right now, to kind of get prepared for AI. So the first one, be careful, proceed with caution. All you enter abandoned hope. It's since the advent of ChatGPT in November, anything that has AI, is kind of like, super trendy right now. So you're getting a lot of, new apps, new services that say they are AI ready and things like that. Well, it's important to proceed with caution because those new AI tools, they're very fragile. They're brand new. It's a new technology. So even though, your stepbrother's girlfriend's father's startup is absolutely amazing, well, there is a chance that if you use those tools, with the company software, that things may break. You may actually open new vectors of attacks for bad actors because, again, those third-party AI tools, it's brand new technology. So if anyone out there is, test driving those tools and things like that, be extremely careful because it's very, very new. Tip number 2, consolidate and simplify your tool sets, right? So if currently you are using lots of different companies, if you will, like providers for your services, let's say, your web conferencing software is from one company, and then your storage is from another company, and then your email is through Microsoft for Exchange. One thing that's very important to understand is that these AI tools will not natively communicate between each other on day one. Eventually they will. You can go on the Apple Store right now and buy all sorts of Microsoft products. It's been years, it's great. But when the App Store first came out in 2008, no, there was no Microsoft services on there. There were no non-Apple products on there. So very important to understand the reality of what's going to happen when it will be there. So one way is to maybe, kind of think, okay, so if we want to consolidate all of our services onto the same, what we call technology stack, so everything from the same company will be an advantage for day one, because that means that there's not going to be any integration, any kind of updates so that those computer programs can talk to each other. The other point that's very important, if you are using lots of different technology providers, is the fact that, as we just saw with Microsoft, you're likely to need to upgrade your base license just to be able to have the add-on and use AI. Well, if you're using 5 different companies for your technology services, you will likely have to face 5 price increases to be able to use AI with all those. So that can add up very, very, very fast. So again, the tip is consolidate. Try to pick one winner. So, okay, we want to have everything on there. Obviously, I am super biased towards Microsoft, but there are other big players out there that you could potentially choose for that, but pick one. Tip number 3. This one is going to be the most important one on the customer side, and that's something that you can start thinking about, planning, reaching out to providers for, because as we mentioned, you want to have all of your stuff on the cloud, on the same platform, so that you can get the most out of Copilot, right? It only has access to that data. So a lot of customers that have been kind of waiting to put things on the cloud now have finally a really good reason to do it. So that server that's been in the kind of maintenance closet next to the mop has been doing great for the last 10 years. There's been no reason to move that, but now you want to move it to the cloud so that Copilot can give you some insights on that data. But you may not want everyone in your company to have access to that data. So having that, what we call governance, so having those kind of protections in place, that hierarchy, so that people at the executive level have certain access to data, people at the director level have certain access to data, but brand new employee Johnny Smith doesn't have access to the CEO's personal emails or shared documents on his OneDrive from day one. So it's going to be very important to review that, to make sure you have that set up properly, so that first you can kind of make sure that you have access to the data that you need, but that everybody else doesn't, that it's set up properly. Because right now, if you don't have that set up, it's very difficult, but a very ambitious person could probably, within the company, find some shared files or things like that. But as we mentioned with Copilot, it makes things that could normally take you hours or days be available in minutes. So they're going to be able to just ask Copilot to find this data for you. With the right governance in place, the response from Copilot is going to be, you don't have access to that data. So super important point. Tip 4. So kind of hinted to it a little bit on the last tip, but for data to be visible to Microsoft Copilot when it comes out, it's going to need to be in the cloud. So you want everything that you do from now on, as soon as possible, to be connected to the cloud. So if you're using the cloud version of an application, great, no problem, it's synced to the cloud. But if you're using the desktop version, make sure you have that cloud sync on, so that that data is also put on SharePoint OneDrive. Why? Because again, when you're going to have Copilot, when it's going to come in, it's going to need to be trained on what you want, or the data that you have, the history of your company and things like that. So if today you're having all of your customer conversations or all of your meetings with a non-Microsoft platform, well, when Copilot comes out, it's not going to have access to all of those historical, conversations, meetings, data, and all of that. So as of today, try to start to get into some good habits to put all of that data into the cloud, so that when Copilot comes out, it will be able to hit the ground running. Think of a brand new graduate from a university that you hire in your company as your personal assistant. They never make any spelling mistakes. They know how to count to 1,000,000 without making any math errors or anything like that, but they know nothing about your company. So it takes some time for them to be ramped up. But with Copilot, as long as you have all of that data available to it from day one, you will see that the ramping up is going to be amazing. And then finally, the last tip, again, hinted to it a little bit before. It's anything that you've been putting on the back burner about migrating to the cloud because there just was no reason for it. It just works. Don't fix what's not broken or anything like that. Well, with Copilot, that has changed. Of course, it is true that 3, 4, 5 years from now, there's going to be some connectors or APIs, and it will be able to talk to on-prem software and things like that. But I don't think that's a risk that a company wants to take, to kind of wait 10 years after everybody else has cars, before we retire our horse and carriage, right? You want to be able to compete on the same level as everybody else. So right now, today, before all of these tools are ready, start getting your house in order. Start making sure that everything is on the Microsoft stack if you're going to want to use Copilot. Make sure that anything that's hybrid, maybe now time to move it into the cloud fully, or at least replicate it into the cloud. And like we mentioned before, make sure that it's all on the same technology stack for this. Otherwise, not going to work on day one. So I think that's it for tips. Yep. So some key takeaways. I know I repeat myself, but I know that there's so much going on right now. Maybe some of you have been kind of watching your phone half and half. So again, the AI revolution is coming. It's not an if, it's a when. So you want to be ready as soon as possible, right? Like whenever you know that there's going to be a moving day, you want to start packing your boxes right now. You don't want the truck to show up in front of your house and it's like, oh, maybe we should start making boxes. That's not going to work. Be careful with open source AI tools or even like paid AI tools. For example, whenever ChatGPT came out, the first 10 apps on the App Store and the Google Play Store that were available that were called ChatGPT were fake. Like like now there is an app from OpenAI ChatGPT, but all of these things, it's brand new. So be very, very careful who you give the keys to your kingdom to. 3, consolidate your tool sets. Pick a winner. Obviously we highly recommend Microsoft, but pick one winner and make sure everything is on that same stack. Optimize governance. Again, so important to not have any type of embarrassing type of things. People sometimes have bad days and they could have malicious intent. And with the tools that Copilot is going to give them, they could use them to hurt your company unless you have governance set up properly. Work in the cloud, you want to feed that data to the cloud. You want to make sure that everything that you do from now on has a trace in the cloud so that Copilot will be able to provide you insights from it. And anything that's still not connected to the cloud needs to be moved yesterday. So I think, yeah, we're at the part for questions. So hopefully I wasn't super boring and there are some questions.
Alex, you were fantastic. Thank you so much for walking us through everything, showing us those great demos. I think we had a lot of really excited people on the line because we've had a lot of questions coming in. And
oh boy, okay.
So get ready for them. And thanks everyone for continuing to listen in. So we've been grouping these questions to try to make them digestible for everyone. So our first kind of set of questions are really on the how it's going to work kind of side of this conversation. And I'll mention a lot of these questions kind of came in prior to us sharing exactly where we are in this being released. So just a reminder for everyone, you saw a few moments ago, Copilot hasn't been released to the mass public yet. So I think some of these questions are going to be knocked off really quickly, but I will let Alex answer them anyways. Do you need to turn it on in Outlook for it to be operational in there?
Yes, at the admin level, you will have to enable Copilot for apps. And for that to be possible, it will need to have what's called apps for enterprise, which is why we're talking about M365 E3 or above as far as the minimum licensing for the full experience.
Awesome. Thank you. And our next one, it's related to the Teams demo that we were showing. Do you have to enable recording for Copilot to have access to what we saw?
You will be able to disable the recording that Copilot does for privacy, compliance, and all of that. But by default, it will have access to that data. It's hard to say, it's not going to be like a true recording like humans would understand, but it will take the metadata from those customer meetings, those Teams meetings, unless you turn it off.
Thanks, Alex. And just digging into that one a little bit more, you mentioned you'd be able to turn it off. Is that feature, how we're thinking about it, probably at the administrative level, or is that at the per user, that user's going into?
It's the per user level, much like you can mute yourself or turn your camera on or off.
Awesome. The next kind of set of questions is around licensing. So one of the questions we had is, will it automatically be included in the E3 licenses? Again, had a lot of questions coming in, but you were answering them as we were going. Maybe you just want to speak to that one and make sure the answer is clear.
So some features of AI, right, will be available in the Microsoft suite moving forward, right? We already know right now there's a Teams Premium license that does a lot of the Copilot things that we talked about in the demo earlier. But other than the light AI tools included in the suite, for everything that we've discussed, mainly it's going to have to be with the add-on, because the add-on, it pretty much gives you access to that AI electricity, if you will, that would come from Microsoft, because it's, again, very, very important that the way it's going to work with Copilot, your data will never actually make it to the Microsoft data center, much like your data when you're writing a Word document isn't being replicated on the Microsoft data center, for somebody else to read anytime that they like. So it really is just signals that are sent to the power station at Microsoft, and they send you back that electricity to turn the lights on for the Copilot to answer those types of questions. So hopefully that image helps a little bit about how your data is kept safe, because it's never actually sent outside of your bubble.
Thank you. Another question around our licensing here. I think we talked about this. Licensing, this add-on can be added on a per user level, Alex?
Yes.
Yeah. And kind of further on to that question, will there be, from what we've heard so far, pricing models where Copilot can be added on with those, business standard licenses, as opposed to the E3 and E5 plus kind of licenses?
So the 7 years experience at Microsoft that I have will make me say that the only thing that we know for sure from Microsoft is that things will change. So I would not be surprised if there would eventually be a business level, kind of stripped down version of Copilot available on top of Business Premium and Business Standard. But can you take that risk to wait 1 year, 2 years, 3 years before those options are available and stay on the analog? So if I can expand on that a little bit, like, think about the car, right? Like, the car is now available. It used to take 30 workers 5-10 days to be able to move, X amount of boxes from point A to point B. Now that the car is available and your competitors have cars, they're able to move 200 times the amount of boxes you were able to move manually. If in your mind waiting a month, 2 months, 6 months puts you behind your competitor with the normal productivity that you have right now, with Copilot, it really is, again, like, they're going to have cars while you're still walking. So 6 months delay could actually put you years behind as far as competitiveness and, growth and new customer contracts. So it is going to be, a per business type of a question to answer, but that would be my question to you. Can you afford to wait? I would suspect no.
Yeah, definitely the right way to be framing that kind of decision and investment for our companies on the line here. More questions on this licensing side. Is the $30 per user per month a flat license fee across all licensing levels?
Yes, it's one add-on, one what we call SKU, which stands for stock keeping units, if anyone was ever wondering. So it really is one license type that is added on to an applicable base license. So as we saw, Business Standard, Business Premium for the partial experience, M365 E3 or M365 E5 to have the full experience.
And just to confirm, if you already have that E3 license, you will still have to pay an additional $30 for the add-on of Copilot.
Exactly, but at least in your case, you don't have to upgrade first.
Great. Okay, that's what we're seeing on the licensing side for now. One of the questions here is around languages. Obviously, you're in Quebec, just like our headquarters for Quadbridge. How is Microsoft thinking of multi-language support with these AI tools?
Yeah, from what has been touted, and again, I'll wait to see it before I believe it, but it's over 100 languages will be available on day one. So, French, English, Mandarin, Japanese, Spanish, German, are pretty much, if you look at any Microsoft type of website that has a language preference, usually has a list of about 30 some languages that you can kind of auto translate to. Those will be available from day one.
Thank you. Now, this question is kind of leaning more into a specific workload that our participant is looking to solve. So they're asking, do we have a ChatGPT-like interface to prompt Copilot, like custom training with company private data?
Yes, that's likely going to be what they call Microsoft Syntax, which is the Azure, the OpenAI Azure Cognitive Search feature, which is one of the large language models that Copilot will use. So you will be able to kind of create scripts and bots and internal knowledge bases and basic customer service templates based on your data, and kind of train it to say, whenever it gives a response, you can say, well, this was a bad response, this was a better response, so that it learns from those prompts, so that you have an internal encyclopedia that you can ask it questions to. Otherwise, by default, it is a blade, like we've seen in the videos that you open. So it's like a little pop-up on the side that comes up that gives you different options and where you have your chat. But it will also come with different APIs, which is application programmable interface, which means it's just the secret handshake from one program to another program. So you will be able to get them to talk to each other as well. So any type of proprietary software that you have, you will be able to kind of train Copilot to understand it and get some good answers or good insights, or some code, whatever you want, grocery lists, vacation suggestions, things like that.
And Alex, that functionality, that's a bit of what you were speaking about, right? Like the longer term kind of integration capabilities of the tool that aren't necessarily going to be available
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there is, like a whole aspect of M365 Copilot that is the technical side, and that's something, that, I talk more about every day with partners, but for that question, it's like, yes, the answer is yes. You will be able to do this. You may need some help, from maybe Quadbridge to help you get it going. But yes, you will be able to accomplish this.
Thank you. Another just tag along to that question, what are the cost factors and products associated with Copilot custom training with company data?
Right now, if you were to use the OpenAI services in Azure, you would see some costs for the training, right? And it's even like the line item is training costs, right? To get the service to get better at understanding your data. But much like Windows 365, which you may or may not be familiar with, this is an all-in-one licensing cost, right? So the only cost that you will have is the $30 add-on for Microsoft Copilot. How much you use it, whether you're keeping the lights on all night or you just seldom use it, will never incur any extra costs. You're not going to have like a bill of like the Azure consumption on the training that you've done.
Thanks, Alex. Now, kind of switching directions for a moment here, you spoke about the importance of getting data into the cloud and centralizing and simplifying your kind of IT stack so that you're kind of consolidated as much as possible, so that you're giving, the biggest breadth of data available to the AI for education purposes. So one of the questions we have here along those lines is, can we train Copilot with documents on SharePoint or other private data sources?
Yes, absolutely. That's going to be probably one of the main things that you'll want to do to make it your Copilot.
And just expanding on that, Alex, that those private data sources, do those have to reside in Azure for the
on day one? Very likely, but again, like we've mentioned, eventually there will be In preview right now, there is already some API connectors with the Microsoft Graph. There's some WebSockets that you can turn on for Teams add-ons and things like that. So again, it's gonna be available, but just think back. Anytime any new technology, kind of came in, or anytime there's I think there's even like on TV shows, they make jokes about Windows updates happening at the worst time, right? So that's the risk from those things, that if you want to have a Frankenstein's monster type of setup, well, he could run wild. It's it's a risk to take. Whereas if you take everything on the same stack, if you buy a car from a company, well, you expect that the tires fit on your car because it's from that same company and so forth.
Yeah, and down the same path, one of the specific questions we have here is, can it tie into an IBM DB2 database?
I'm not exactly familiar with what that is, but I will still say confidently yes with those APIs. As long as that database can work with a JSON file, you're good to go.
Great. Now, a great question we have here, and I'm sure something everybody is going to be very cognizant of as we go into this new AI world, is will there be any way for a user to distinguish whether an email, document, or any of those outputs are augmented with Copilot?
That's a very, very good question. During Microsoft Inspire, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, has said, and you can watch that keynote speech online, that out of the principles of using AI, this part is one of the most important parts. So they're talking about watermarks, embedded into the metadata. So this is something that kind of like tags within the files that have been manipulated with AI, so that any tool, anything would say this image has been modified, maybe like a little tag or a caption at the bottom. But yes, there will definitely be some very easily identifiable markers from Microsoft Copilot on anything that it's done that that AI was used as part of or completely generated by AI. But yes, it's very, very important to Microsoft to help users, distinguish what's real and what's not.
And Alex, I guess what's the flip side of that kind of conversation for those of us who didn't have the opportunity to kind of hear the full conversation there, like people who maybe don't want the data, anyone to know that their documents have been crafted by an AI as opposed to an individual?
Well, it's the same thing with plagiarism and all of those. I would love to claim that I wrote King Lear and Romeo and Juliet and all of that, but I didn't, right? So it's obviously especially if you look to kids with ChatGPT and exams and the tools to kind of find out if they've been cheating, and then the tools to kind of get around to find out. It's always going to be a cat and mouse game on that, but I would be on the side of knowing what's real and what's not. Again, it can be whenever you're creating that presentation. Let's say that PowerPoint presentation. It's not going to have like on the image like a whole like Getty image sample type of thing. When we're talking about like the metadata, it would be like within the file itself, like the JPEG or the GIF that's in there. There's going to be some information that cannot be removed that's going to say this was an AI generated image. So it's not going to take away from the customer experience that you want them to have, that see the dog with the red balloon in the park on a cloudy day. It's just that if someone was like, is this a real dog? They'll be able to kind of right click on the image and there's going to be a tag that's going to say, no, this is AI generated.
Yeah, it sounds like something we're going to start to see prevalently and start to look for, and probably
if you go on I'm on LinkedIn all the time because again, I'm a nerd. So I'd say about half of the articles do have some sort of clause at the bottom. This article was written with the help of AI or anything like that. So right now it's more of like an honor system, but it's definitely going to be out there because if you get a very, very authentic looking email, from the government saying that, you're about to be foreclosed on, you want to have a very quick and easy way to find out, oh, okay, this isn't real. Like, I shouldn't panic.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alex, for indulging me in that conversation. We do have more questions. So this next one, and we're getting into the details here, guys. Will Microsoft make public Copilot's design principles, such as why has Copilot just provided such a recommendation?
Absolutely, yes. That's a great question, and it's a great concern. In one of the examples that we had shown, especially the Excel one, where we asked it a question, to give us the top 3 sales trends, and then it gave the responses, and then right below there's a button that says explain. So you can actually pretty much ask Copilot to show its work, like how did it get from point A to point B, like how did it make these claims. If there's any relevant data from files that it used in those calculations, those files will be available as links, much like whenever you do a search on the web and you have like the top results and things like that.
I will leave this as our last question here. How does this differ/integrate with the upcoming Windows Copilot and Bing AI that will be built into the Windows OS in the future? Are they putting data into the same data lake as 365 Copilot? Will these need admin rights to turn on as well? Any insights on that, Alex?
Right now, Windows Copilot is for the home or the customer, the retail side of things, whereas what we're talking about for Microsoft 365 Copilot is the enterprise side. So Microsoft has a very different approach to those. Whenever it's for the home, the individual user has a lot more rights, admin rights, and things like that to manage these things. Whereas on the business side, it's more at the admin level, a different user that would be able to do this. For example, the Bing chat that people can use that is linked to GPT-4, that's linked with the OpenAI service, that's publicly available for free since a few months. Well, there's going to be a Bing Chat Enterprise service that's going to come out shortly from Microsoft, which will give the Chat GPT-ish experience, but with the enterprise controls. Again, with the security for the data, and your data is not going to be used to train. Your queries are not going to be available, and things like that. So it's really important to kind of try to separate as much as possible anything that's coming for the home, such as the Copilot for Windows and the Copilot for Bing and things like that, were compared to what's going to be available for the enterprise.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for leaving us on a great note there of what's more to come as all these tools come together very quickly and everything's emerging at the same time. So thanks, Alex, for joining us, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you for having me. Have a good one, everybody.